Hey guys, in this video let us learn how we can use GitHub Actions to set up continuous deployment to Azure Kubernetes Service. So before we get started, a quick introduction about myself. So this is Swaminathan Vetri. I work as an architect at Maersk. I'm also a Microsoft MVP under Developer Technologies. I tweet at @svswaminathan. My GitHub repositories are available at svswaminathan. And my YouTube channel is youtube.com/swaminathanvetri. And I write technical blogs at swaminathanvetri.in. So the agenda of this session is going to be this, right? Let's start with a basic Blazor server-side app, and then let's run it in the local, and let's build Docker images for the same, and let's push the Docker image into the DockerHub registry, and then let's try to deploy this Docker image into the local Kubernetes, right? And from there we'll push it into GitHub, and we'll try to set up the GitHub Actions for this. Right. So what are the tools which I'm going to use for this particular demo? Right. So first thing is the Visual Studio Code is the IDE which I'm going to use. So I've also installed a couple of extensions. One is Docker extension, another is Kubernetes extensions, and I'm going to use a Dotnet Core 3.1.3 version of an application. And you also need to have AZ CLI, which is Azure CLI, installed in your machine. And Docker Desktop, of course, if you're on Windows. Since I'm using Windows, I've mentioned as Docker Desktop on Windows. If you're on Mac, you can very well use Docker Desktop for Mac. And you also need an Azure subscription because you need to create an Azure Kubernetes Service, which needs an Azure subscription, and of course a GitHub account where you can host these repositories. So though I'm going to use a .NET application as a sample for this particular thing, so you can use any of the application, whether you are from Python or Java or anything else, you can definitely use those applications. So yeah, it's all about how do you build a Docker image, and then how the Docker image is getting pushed into Kubernetes using GitHub Actions. So with that introduction, let's get started with the demo. So what I've already done is I've created a basic .NET Core application, so which is available here. So let's quickly run through the application to see what it does. It's the just out of the box, whatever the template we have for Blazor application, that's what I'm having it right currently. So if you just go there, you'll just see these different pages, and you can just play around with this. And I just added the host name from where it is being served. That's the only change I've done to this basic application, and that's running here now. So I also pushed this application into GitHub. So it's available at github.com/svswaminathan and /GitHubActions AKS Demo is a repository, and you can go and check out this entire thing. By the end of the video, what we are going to do, it'll all would be available in this particular repository, so you're free to go and check out that. In the repository, I've also added a couple of things, so which is about the secrets. So we would need to log into Docker to push our Docker images via GitHub Actions. So for that, I've added the Docker login and the password here into the GitHub itself. And I've also added my Azure credentials so that I'll be able to access the AKS and then perform the deployment into AKS. Alright, so now let's get started with Dockerizing this particular application. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Docker extension. Like I mentioned, in Visual Studio Code I have installed this Docker extension, so which gives all these nice features. So you get to see all the containers, what is running in your machine, and all the different images that are available in your machine, and the Docker registry, what you're connected to currently, plus all the different other things, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this extension, take the help of this extension to create the Dockerfile for me. So just say docker, and it has an option to add Docker files to workspace, so I'm going to use that. And you can see that this particular extension can be used to generate Docker files for all of these kind of applications built in these kind of programming languages. So mine is ASP.NET Core, so I'm going to select that. And okay, so it just says this as a generate .NET assets. Okay, let me do that. Okay, so once the assets are built, it should be able to add the Docker files. Core, I'm going to use the operating system for my containers as Linux, so I'm choosing Linux, and I don't need Docker Compose file as of now because it's going to be only one particular application or one server-side application which is going to have everything in it. So I'm going to say no, and yes, the default ports I'm going to leave it as is. So once that is complete, it creates a Docker file like this for us, right? That's much easier and simpler for us. So what it is trying to do is we are trying to, since my application is based on .NET Core 3.1, it is able to identify that, and then it is using the base images .NET Core ASP.NET 3.1. right? So this is basically a multi-stage Docker file. That means this is more like from where it is going to, or what is the base image what it is going to use to run the application. and then this is the build. So basically this image contains only the runtime of ASP.NET Core 3.1, and this is where the entire SDK is available. So all your build activities are happening in this particular lines from 6 to 12, right? So we are taking this as an base image, and we are copying our particular project into this particular repository called in this folder, and we are doing a .NET restore to restore all the NuGet packages, and then we are trying to do a .NET build to do a build of our application. And once it is built, we are also trying to take output of this particular layer or the stage and use it as a publish, and then we are trying to do a publish, and whatever is published is what is again copied into our base, which is like as a final here. So at the end of it, what would happen is when this particular container comes up, it is going to do an .NET AKS Demo.dll, which is nothing but just going to bring up the same page what we just saw by browsing the localhost 5000 by running .NET run command, right? Okay, so now once this is generated, let's go ahead and build image for this as well, right? So again here, if you go and say docker and build image, it is going to do the same thing for you. Or if you're fond of command, you can very well run the docker commands. So it's going to take a while to complete the build, and once the build is complete, we could very well run the docker image as well from this particular extension using the extension itself. Okay, I believe this should be complete, so we can go ahead and check out here to go to see images, and I've got a lot of images, so let me just quickly refresh this and see. I believe this is the one, yeah. So AKS GA demo latest a few seconds ago, so that's the image what we've just built, right? So to run the image, you have again the option to use the same extension and then say docker and then run, and you choose whatever the image which you want to run, and then select the tag of it, which is latest. And okay, so it's trying to do a port mapping of 80, so that's not going to work. Let me quickly change that. So here I'm going to change this local port to 5000. Okay, now the application is running. So if I go to this and then say localhost /5000. Okay, so as you can see, earlier it was showing a machine name. Now since it's running from the container, it is showing the container instance name. So we can also go to docker ps command and confirm that it's running from that. So eb49 is the container ID from where this particular app image is running, and we can see the same thing here. So cool. So first thing is complete, right? So we were able to build a Docker image, and we're able to confirm that it's working properly here. So let's go ahead and try to deploy this into Kubernetes. Right. Okay, so to do that, again, let's take the help of the Kubernetes extension what we have. Okay, before we deploy into Kubernetes, we need to push this image into the DockerHub. So let us see if we have the option to Docker push. Yeah, so I'm gonna use this AKS Demo. I'm gonna tell that, and I've already logged into my Docker hub here, so it's showing my namespace and the repository and everything. So it says login succeeded, and it should be able to push it. So we can go ahead and quickly verify that here. If I go to hub.docker.com and log into my repository here, one big AKS demo, yeah, it's already there. We can see that it's updated a few seconds ago. So good. So we have already pushed our image as well into DockerHub, right? So the next step is for us to go ahead and see how we can perform the deployment into Kubernetes. So for that, what I'm going to do again is to take help of the Kubernetes extension. Okay, so let me go here and create a folder called Kubernetes, and we can put all the Kubernetes manifests under that particular folder. So first thing what you need is a deployment.yaml file where you would have to define the deployment. So I'll say when I say deployment, you can see that IntelliSense coming up. That's from the Kubernetes extension, and I'm going to take that help, which is going to give me all the basic options what we need for deploying a Docker image into Kubernetes. So the name, I'm going to use it as GitHub Actions AKS Demo, and the image name is wannabe geek /GA AKS Demo. Okay, and the container port, it is at 80, so I'm going to leave that as is. So that's one thing. So what we have done here is basically we created a deployment manifest. So as you can see, the kind is deployment, and this is the name of the deployment, which we are setting it as GitHub Actions AKS Demo, and the selector is also named this way. So whenever you want to use this in another manifest like a service, so this is where your labels would help us. And the spec, what container we are going to run, we are going to run this particular image 1MB/GA AKS Demo, and these are the memory resource limits for this particular container, and we are going to expose the container port 80 for this application, right? So when we perform this will just go ahead and deploy the application into deploy the image into the Kubernetes cluster. But for us to be able to access it from outside, we would still need to create something called service in Kubernetes. So again, we'll go ahead and create that inside this folder, service.yaml. And if you go and type service, you'll also get this option to type Kubernetes service. And here I'm going to say GitHub Actions AKS Demo Service. And the app name, I need to give the app name from here, which is GitHub Actions AKS Demo, so that it will expose this particular app. And this port here is going to be 80, and my target port is also going to be 80. Yeah, and the type, just a minute. Okay, so the port is going to be 8080, which is where when the service, when it's exposed, it will have the container, and we need to provide the type. So there are different options of type here. So since we're going to deploy it into AKS, we can use something called load balancer, so that it uses the load balancer of AKS and it is going to expose the service there. Okay, so now next up is to deploy this particular thing. So let's see if we can use the Kubernetes apply. Okay, so before deploying the service, let's go ahead and deploy this YAML file first, deployment YAML first. So I'll say Kubernetes apply. This is going to create a new resource. Yes, let's say create, and yes, it's created. And now let's go, if you go to this extension now to Kubernetes, what I see here, and if you open the, okay, so what I've done is I've already mapped my AKS cluster in here, so it would have got deployed into that cluster. Okay, I think I missed that part. So if you go and check kubectl config, get context, as you can see, I've got two different instances of Kubernetes running. One is the Docker desktop, which you get when you install the Docker desktop, and the second one is something which I've created already in my Azure subscription, and I have mapped that particular AKS instance here. So how did I do that? So there is this command from AKS from AZCLI. So when you go ahead and run this command az AKS get credentials, and this is a resource group where I have my AKS instance, and this is the name of my AKS instance. When you do that, it is going to set your current Kubernetes kubectl CLI to talk to this particular instance. That's what I've done already. So it's already mapped to that. So now if you go back here into the Kubernetes extension, so we can see this GA AKS Demo Cluster, and if you go under the workloads, under the deployments, you should be able to see the one which we just did, which is GitHub Actions AKS Demo, which is exactly this particular deployment here, right? And if you go to the services would be available under the network. So if you go to expand the services, you can see something called okay, I think I haven't run the service yet, so let's go ahead and deploy the service now. So say Kubernetes and then say apply, and this will create a new resource, and say create. Okay, this is done. So now if I refresh this particular service, I should be able to see the services here too. All right, so that's how you can visually see how all these things are happening here. Or if you're fond of command line, you can always go ahead and say run this particular command kubectl get services, and that is going to get you the service what is available. And it also has an external IP. So now if we access this IP 40.81.71.102 :8080, we should be able to see the same application. 8080. Come on, is that correct? 71.102 8080. that should work. Okay, it came. I think it took a while. Okay, I thought I've goofed up something. Okay, we are good then. So it says now hello world from GitHub Actions AKS Demo, whatever the instance name from there, from where it is running, right? So that means we were able to deploy it into the Kubernetes instance from Visual Studio Code itself, right? But that's not the intent of this particular session, right? We're going to see how we want to deploy this entire thing using our GitHub Actions. So for that, obviously we need to commit all of these changes into GitHub so that we can go ahead to GitHub and then start creating the workflow file there. Okay, so let me go here, and it says docker ignore, which is good. I have my Docker file, which is good, and yeah, deployment. So I'm going to say added Docker and it manifests. Okay. Alright, so we are in github.com portal, and this is a repository, right? So let's go ahead and get started with creating the GitHub Actions for this particular project. If you're completely new to GitHub Actions, check out my other videos where I've explained about the basics of GitHub Actions, and yeah, you can take a look at it and then you can get back here. So to get started with GitHub Actions, right? So all you can do is just go ahead and click on Actions tab in the repository, and you'll get to see the different options to create the workflows. Right, either you can set up a workflow for yourself, or if you also have a lot of templates available which you can reuse for the purposes. In this case, we are going to set up from scratch. So let's click on set up a workflow yourself, and what it would do is it would create an YAML file within the .github folder under the workflows folder. So I'm going to name this as deploy to aks.yaml, right, and this name could also be AKS deployment. So okay, I'll just quickly zoom in. Yeah, so what it has done is it's created the basic workflows, the triggers basically here. So on push of the code to branches to master here, and also if there are any pull requests created to master branch, this particular workflow would run. And what it is going to do is what is mentioned beneath these jobs. So it's going to do the build, which is going to run on this particular runner. So Ubuntu latest is a runner what we are going to use for this particular demo, and these are the other actions what are mentioned here. So there are quite a few things what we would need to do as part of this to set up this, right? So first thing is we need to run the .NET build and ensure that our code base is properly building. And then once it is built, we need to build a Docker image using the Dockerfile, and then push the Docker image to the Docker repository, and again pull the Docker image from the repository and then deploy it into the Kubernetes. Right, so we're gonna do those step by steps in the workflow here. So typically whatever we just did by using the commands and using the VS Code extensions, we're just gonna do the same thing in the GitHub Actions here. So to start with a .NET build, what you can do is just go ahead and search for .NET, and you can see different things. The first thing is we need to set up the .NET Core SDK to mention which version of .NET Core we need to use. So you can click on this copy button here, which will enable you to copy this entire snippet, and go ahead and just copy paste it so that you'll be able to set up that thing. So it's called presentation of a mapping entry. So the web editor itself will give you all this intelligence and all the things about how it is, how your YAML is indented and everything. So I'm going to use this in .NET version. What we need is 3.1.x. So I'm going to mention that here. And source URL, owner, config, and other things are not really needed for us. So I'm going to leave all of them as is. I'm going to delete all of them. All right. So now we have set up the .NET, .NET SDK version. So next thing is to run the .NET build. Right. So there is also something called run, where you can use this run statement to run the different commands. So what I'm going to do is .NET build, and with the configuration as release. So that's what I'm going to do, and that should let me build the .NET app, build the application. And the next what we need to do is to do a Docker build. So I'm going to say run. I'm going to again use the run command and say docker build -t. So this application is going to be GitHub Actions AKS Demo : And here is where I'm going to use some of these GitHub environment variables. So because we want to create new image every time, or new tag for the image every time we run the build, we're going to use a GitHub shop, the commit SHA as the unique identifier for the tags. So and once that is done, the next step is to push this particular image into the Docker hub. So before you push, you need to run do a Docker login. So I'm going to do a Docker login here. The name of this is Docker login, and you're going to run Docker login, and the username is going to be, again, this is where I'm going to use the secrets. So like how we were using the environment variables, you can use something called the secrets dot docker login is the one, and the password is going to be, and again similarly whatever I have it in the environment variable. So docker underscore password. So that is going to help us in logging into the Docker, right? And then before even we run the push the image, basically we need to tag the image. So tag Docker image is the name of the next step, and here I'm going to run the command telling Docker tag. So whatever I am going to have like this to my whatever my user ID / this one, right? So my user ID is going to be coming from Docker login, so I'm going to say Docker login / the same thing. So that's how Docker CLI would enable you to without tagging we'll not be able to push the images. So we have tagged that, and the next step is actually to do the push Docker image, and then say run. Okay, and now I'm going to say Docker push, and then the same thing, right? So we're going to push this particular image here. Okay, I believe this should be good, so we can go first. Let's run through this. Let's not do full blown in the first shot itself. So let's go ahead and preview this and then commit this to check if it's able to run and create a Docker image and push it into the DockerHub. And as a next step, we can then start adding the Kubernetes part of it. So I'm going to say start commit. Yeah, for now I'll just leave the comment as the added Docker build and push, commit new file. And once this is committed, and if there are no errors in this particular workflow file, the action should automatically get start triggered. Okay, it looks like there's a problem here. So if there is an issue, it is gonna do this. Could pass it. Okay, I think I missed the secrets dot here. My bad. Okay, so that's how you can also see how the actions validates the workflow file, the first step before even running it. Let's go back here and then say secrets dot docker password, secrets dot docker password, secrets docker login. Okay, so I think this should be good now. Docker password. Okay, date. Let's leave the comment by the default comments as is. And now let's go and check. Hopefully it should be fine. Okay, so this is the name of the job, what we have given, the name of the steps, what we have given at the top level. So it now what we are using is an self-hosted, not the self-hosted, sorry, it's a GitHub hosted runners. So it takes a few seconds to provision a new runner for us. So now once the runner is provisioned, it will start doing all the different steps what is mentioned in the YAML file. So it's doing a Docker build. Okay, looks like Docker build has failed. I think I missed the the current workspace, whichever I need to give. Believe, yeah, the dot. Okay, so let's go back to our code and fix that. So here I'll just go and edit. So Docker build, yeah, I missed to specify the workspace from where it needs to run this particular command. So I'll say commit data docker build command. I'll say commit changes. Okay, let's watch the build this time. AKS deployment. Hopefully this should succeed. Okay, it's doing all of these things, setting up the .NET Core SDK, .NET build. Oops, it failed again. It's the problem. For the context. Okay, so let me take a look at it once again. Okay, I think got the issue. Yeah, looks like I just committed in my VS Code and I haven't really pushed the code. So let me go ahead and do a git push here. We don't see any Dockerfile or the Kubernetes manifest what we created in the code base. Yeah. So hopefully once this push is complete, we should be able to see them. Okay, it's good here. Let me go ahead and refresh this page. And yeah, I think now we have the Dockerfile and everything. Since we have just done a push to the master branch, the action should have already started. So let's go ahead and check the actions here. Build. Okay, good that it already provisioned the runner for us. Let's look at the Docker build. Hopefully this should, yeah, it's good now. So it's able to build the Docker image. Hopefully the rest of the commands are proper. Let's give this a few minutes or a few seconds to minutes, and once it's complete, let's come back and check the logs. All right, the job is complete. I think it's successful now. So we should be seeing an image with this tag, GitHub Actions AKS Demo colon whatever the commit ID here. Let's go back and check in the DockerHub, and if I go and refresh this particular application, or I think it's a different image now. So let's go back to my repositories. Yeah, GitHub Actions AKS Demo is the one which we got the new tag now, right? So that means our build of a Docker image and pushing the Docker image is successful. So let's go ahead and edit the file to perform the AKS deployment. So I'm going to go here again. So there are two ways you can do it. One, you can go to this particular in GitHub portal itself, and then you can use the site pane which gives all the GitHub actions, and then you can pull and drag and pull it into your workflow file and create it. Or you can also use in VS Code. You can do your discovery part and browser separately, and then go back to VS Code, and then you can even update your workflow file there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this marketplace actions here, and then we'll see how we can directly make changes here. So next step is to do the Kubernetes. So if you go ahead and search for Kubernetes, so you can see different things, right? So first thing what we need to do is to set the context of the Kubernetes, like what I mentioned in the local machine, where I was able to set the context of my kubectl command to the AKS cluster. The similar thing what we need to do, so that the runner, when it runs this particular kubectl commands, it needs to know to which Kubernetes API it needs to connect to, and where it needs to really perform the deployment. So for that, what we can use this particular the action, Azure Kubernetes set context. So I'm going to use that. So copy that here and say paste. So here, so credentials is where I'm going to use my Azure credentials, what I have pushed into the secrets. So secrets dot Azure credentials. Yeah, the creds, and the resource group name where I have my AKS running is AKS Demo RG, and the cluster name is AKS Demo Cluster. So I'm going to paste that here. Okay, so that's first part, right? So what we've done now is we have set the context. So next thing is about how do we pull the image and then start running it. So to pull the image, Docker images, right, from in the CI, you need to create something called image pull secrets, with which is where the kubectl command would be able to pull the image from your Docker registry. In the local machine, when I run it, I've already logged into my DockerHub. using the docker login command. So it was able to use those credentials. Since we're running in the CI tool now, we need to ensure how or what credentials it needs to use to pull the image. So for that, again, what we need to do is we need to create something called secrets. So if you go, there is already create secret in Kubernetes. So that's the command what we are going to use next. That's the action what we are going, or rather that's the action or the step what we are going to do now. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time, I'm just going to copy the snippet from my current one. So the next step is to create this Kubernetes cluster. I'll copy the snippet and then let me explain what we are trying to do here. Right. So this is the same action what I'm using here. So I'm specifying the container registry URL as index.docker.io. Because I'm using DockerHub as the registry, I'm giving this. If in case you are using Azure Container Registry or any other container registry for that matter, you could give that registry URL here. And the credentials to log into this or connect to this container registry is mentioned here. The Docker login and Docker password, because I'm using DockerHub again. And the secret type is Docker registry. And the secret name, this is the name of the secret what I have specified here, and this is the name which we would use when we really do the image pull there. Right, so that's the next step. So now we have set the context and we have also created the secrets. The next step is to go ahead and perform the actual deployment. Right, so again going back to this here, so there's something called deploy to Kubernetes cluster. So that's the action what we would be using. So I also have a small snippet ready for this, so I'm gonna do this one. I'm going to copy and paste this, and let me explain what is done here. So it's the same action as you can see, Azure/KH deploy v1, which is what we're using here. And the manifest, what are the manifests which we want to deploy is mentioned below under the KH folder. So deployment.yaml and service.yaml are the two files which we want to really deploy. Right, and the image, what is the image? So the image is again pushed from the previous one. So whatever we tried to pull, whatever we pushed here with my repository / whatever the image name colon the tag, the same thing we need to push mention here. So I'm gonna take that entire thing completely and I'm going to replace this here. Alright, so okay, so I don't want that this doesn't somehow like this. So yeah, this should be good now. So whatever my repository / image name colon the tag name, and image pull secret is the Docker image pull secret, which is what we are using here, and the action what we are going to perform is deploy. So that's what I've written here. So I hope this particular workflow file is complete. Let's go ahead and preview the changes. And what we've added is these 4 things. First, set the context, and we have set the credentials. And then we are creating the secret. We are creating the secret. That's the credential for accessing the Docker registry, and then we are deploying it into the Kubernetes cluster. So let's go ahead and add a KH deployment, and then I'll say commit changes. Now this should again trigger the actions if the workflow file is proper. Which I'm hoping it is proper. Let's go ahead and click this, and let's give it a few seconds for it to start. So this is where actually the concept of self-hosted runners would help, because here we are using the managed runners. So we need to wait for a few seconds to minutes depending on the load on the GitHub side for the new runner to be provisioned. And again, for example, since we are doing the Docker build, right, so it needs to pull the image or all the layers of the image every time, since we might get a new instance of Ubuntu every time our build is run. So in such cases, if we are using self-hosted images or self-hosted runners, the build process could be a little more faster. So again, let's give it a few seconds for it to complete, and then let's go back and explore in our Kubernetes extension. Okay, I think it took a while to complete or terminate the existing one, because I kind of use the same deployment and the services which we did in the local machine. It kind of tried to delete the older ones. So now the job is complete. So if you go back to the Visual Studio Code and then go open the cluster, we should be able to see the new, because the service name is the same, it's technically in the same service, and then the deployment would be available under the workloads. If you go to deployment, GitHub Actions AKS Demo. This is the one which got deployed recently, right? And now if you go back to our this one and say kubectl get services, and let's go back and let's go and take the IP address and browse it. yeah, so this is now coming from this particular instance, right? So that's how we were able to deploy the thing. So just to recap, what we've started with is a basic .NET Core or .NET based Blazor server side application. We built a Docker image for that. We push the image into a Docker repository, and then we try to deploy that into Kubernetes using the VS Code extensions. And then we also enable the GitHub Actions, and then we try to see how we were able to deploy the same image into the Kubernetes. Right, so here, just to recap of the GitHub Actions file, right, what we are trying to do here is we have set the triggers for any push or any pull request in the master branch here, and then these are the steps what we are running as part of the workflow. First, we are setting the .NET Core version, and then we are trying to do the Docker related things here, like Docker build and then pushing of the images, and finally we are trying to do all the Kubernetes stuffs here in these three actions. Right, so we are setting the context, and then we're trying to create the secrets with which the images can be pulled from the DockerHub, and then finally we are doing the deployment to the AKS cluster. So that's how simple it is to really perform an perform a continuous deployment into Azure Kubernetes cluster. So like I mentioned in the beginning, so in this example I've used a .NET Core based application because I have good experience with .NET. So and obviously you can use any kind of application, be it built with Java or Python or Go, or any kind of application which can be Dockerized, can be can be leveraged for this CD setup. I hope you learned something new. Thank you so much.